Welcome to Catholic Comments. I'm John O'Keefe.
And I'm Wendy M. Wright. Our guest today is Dr. John Gallagher, who is professor of management at Maryville College in Tennessee. He's here on the Creighton campus to participate in a symposium entitled Faith, Business, and the Common Good. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. I extend my welcome too. I think specifically you're going to be talking about a project you're involved with called Economies of Communion. And I was wondering if we could start by just clarifying or talking a little bit about what that means and what you're going to be talking about.
Okay. The Economy of Communion is a project of the Focalare Movement, a worldwide lay Catholic movement in the church. And it's really a project that's an effort to meet the needs of material needs of people throughout the world, particularly Focalare participants throughout the world. But over the last 20 years, it was founded in 1991. It has the actual management of the businesses themselves has garnered a lot of attention. And that really is my interest in this and my role in this. I became aware of them about 10 years ago and got to know many of the business owners in North America.
So what happened in 1991 was the emergence of this Economy of Communion initiative out of the Focalare, which is an older group. It's 1940s.
So it's a group of businesses associated with Focalare. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's accurate. Incomplete, but accurate.
Okay, so let's make it complete. How would you complete that?
Well, it's
pretend you're a listener who knows nothing about the Economy of Communion.
Yeah, the Focalare is more than an economic movement. It's a spiritual.
So you've got the Focalare, which is a
right.
lay Catholic movement, and then a movement within Focalare is this Economy of Communion.
Right, and the Focalare would describe it as an effort to humanize the economy. But to say that the businesses, the participants in the Economy of Communion are more than just the businesses. The primary participants are the recipients of whatever material aid is provided through the sharing of profits generated by the Economy of Communion businesses. And that takes place on a global scale. So it's very much, first and foremost, the Economy of Communion is really probably best thought of as a development initiative, a way to lift people out of material poverty. And so it was never conceived of as a business philosophy or a business, any managerial principles or anything in that regard. That has sort of grown out of, what the experience that people are actually living.
So as we were talking earlier, the actual Focalare movement emerged in the middle of the 20th century as a commitment to create unity on a number of levels.
Yes.
That sounds like. And so it sounds like the founder, Chiara Lubich, is that
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Going to Brazil and seeing the incredible conditions in which some of the members of Focalare and other people live in the favelas in abject poverty, began to think about this. Can you tell us exactly then, in concrete terms, what does it mean to have businesses that share profits, and who shares, and how that happens?
The original name of the movement was the Economy of Communion in Freedom. And so businesses are free to participate or not participate to whatever extent they believe they're able. So there is no mandatory sharing of profits, for example. It's completely voluntary. And there is no firm, hard, fast rule on how much profit is to be shared. In fact, the Economy of Communion talks about 3 uses for profit. One is to put part of it in common to be used to alleviate material needs. The second is to foster the growth of this culture, what they call the culture of giving. And that includes schools and summer schools and educating youth. And then the third is to reinvest in the business, because if the businesses are not sustainable, it all falls apart. So there's this clear recognition that that's equally as important.
So profit sharing is a key component of what it means to be a business in the Economy of Communion?
Yes.
So is this clearly this was one response to this encounter with poverty, but is there a way that this is also an attempt to engage the Catholic social teaching and an implicit critique of, say, the way market capitalism is usually practiced, which is, you don't share profits, it's maximization of profits. Is there an implicit critique there?
Yes, I think there is an implicit critique. It was not, probably not one of the driving factors behind the creation of the economy of communion, but the phenomenon has really proved attractive to a lot of academics. And so many of us have learned to study what's going on. Many economists, probably more economists than any other particular discipline, very few management scholars. My colleagues and I happen to be the few, I guess. I don't want to say the only, the few. And, the explicit connections to Catholic social teaching are probably more obvious to us. But it certainly is, it seems to us to be Catholic social teaching lived out in day-to-day life.
Right. So I mean, this is a voluntary participation by businesses. Are these mostly small businesses, local businesses? Are we talking large corporate entities? What are we talking?
Generally very small. A large economy of communion business might have 100 employees.
Can you say that over my stupid phone? I had it on airplane mode, but apparently didn't cancel the alerts. So just count to 3 and then just start over.
Count to 3 out loud?
No. Internally.
What was the question?
It was about
Then go ahead and ask the question. Are these small businesses? Wait.
Oh, yeah. The most of the businesses are small businesses, local businesses, probably, fewer than a dozen employees, even though job creation is another aspect of this that was very desirable from the Focalare standpoint. So far it has not proven to be scalable in that sense. Although theoretically there's no reason it couldn't.
What about where are we seeing this phenomenon? I mean, because Focalare is an Italian movement originally.
Italian movement.
And then the original impulse to do this was an encounter with poverty in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
But where are you seeing the flowering of the insight?
Well, first of all, there are over 800 businesses worldwide. There are only 40 in North America. So the large pockets of participation are Brazil, Argentina, Italy, Croatia, Eastern Europe, other parts of Eastern Europe, Asia, the Philippines. Those would probably be the largest concentrations.
Why would you say there are not more participants in the United States? Is that simply because it's not known, or are there more cultural and institutional economic structures that make this difficult?
Well, why don't you ask me something easy? I think, first of all, the Focalare itself is not as widely known in the United States as it is in other countries overseas, particularly Italy and Argentina and Brazil, and Asia, Southeast Asia. So that's one factor. The second factor is the general infrastructure in the United States, particularly, and probably most of North America, is radically different. Our forms of corporate structure, our taxation policies, and actually American companies tend to be fairly generous in terms of community involvement and engagement to start with. So there's already a high level of involvement and engagement.
Yeah, I'm an example. Maybe I shouldn't tout this, but my daughter worked in the corporate headquarters at Target for a number of years, and Target is a remarkable example of a corporation that not only puts back money into the community, but encourages all kinds of service activities of its employees. It has a very different model than I think a lot of corporate entities do.
That's true.
Yeah. But it's not Focalare. But
right.
No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm curious. You said that most people who look at this do so from the perspective of an economist, right? But you're a scholar of management.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it about this movement that intrigues you academically, and why is this an interest to managers?
Well, that's another question without an easy answer. But fundamentally, prior to my being a professor, I was a corporate executive, and I'm Jesuit trained. And so what I didn't know a lot about business when I was a business person, but I knew a lot about what the Jesuits taught me about how to get along with people. And so I was always sort of suspect of the dominant ideas about what constituted good management and good business practice. And so that's actually one of the things that drove me to return and get it to the academy and get a PhD and begin teaching. So I've always been interested in companies or businesses that were not in the mainstream, so to speak.
And what does that look like on the ground? I mean, what would make something a mainstream management model or a non-mainstream management model?
Well, probably the most fundamental difference is profit maximization versus a more holistic view of the purpose of business.
Right, and so the dignity of the human person,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of employees not simply
Mm-hmm.
as producers of
Mm-hmm.
widgets, but also as participants in a community as well.
Yes, and so in direct answer to your question, what intrigues me about the Economy of Communion is that they, because of the Focalare spirituality, their view of business is as a community. It's in their eyes, it's a de facto community. You're involved with employees, you're involved with customers, you're involved with suppliers, you're even involved with competitors. All of those are just other persons.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting, especially we talk a lot about Catholic social teaching on this program,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it can get a little abstract.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not actually touching base with people who are actually keep doing the work of keeping the world moving. And I'm thinking about when Pope Francis was here a few weeks ago. He talked about in Philadelphia. Yeah, he talked about the dignity of work and the importance of that. And so I'm wondering if this is an example of a really applied Catholic social teaching, and if you ever think of it that way.
Yes, and yes, it is, and I do think of it that way. But again, the Economy of Communion business owners are not. That's not consciously how they perceive what they're doing. They just know this is how you behave with other people.
Right. It really emerges out of the spirituality
Exactly.
of the Focolare, which is
Exactly.
one of unity and the shared experience of being human together. And that guides, rather than just, this department isn't, we need to lop them off and,
Mm-hmm.
well, guess they'll all, 600 of them, maybe they'll find another job sometime. That's not an unusual perspective in kind of business and management circles, that simply if something's not making profits, it goes, and that's but this would be, obviously there must be instances in where things are lopped off or things atrophy or something, but that's not the first thing one thinks about, right?
Right, and I don't mean to imply at all that there's not very difficult decisions and very
Right.
very difficult challenges for the business owner and the employees. In fact, I've referred to it often as a crucible of spiritual formation. Business owners have to learn how to continue to grow in this essentially a spiritual discipline.
Mm.
So maybe the last question, how did you find yourself interested in this topic?
Well, again, I've always sort of been interested in companies that were different, and I became aware of the Focolare 10 years ago, only 10 years ago, and I met an individual at a conference and was intrigued and continued to investigate, and then discovered the economy of communion, and it was very interesting. And then I was able to meet an entrepreneur in Indianapolis and go up and look at his business, and actually wrote with a co-author from Jeannie Buckeye from the University of St. Thomas. We wrote a case study on his company, and it was published, and it's available through normal case study channels for professors who want to use cases in their teaching. And at that point, we thought that we might write one case a year, and but then it quickly became apparent that maybe we would be better off to actually try to write a book, which is what we did.
Right, and the name of the book is?
The name of the book is Structures of Grace, the Business Practices of the Economy of Communion, and it was published in December. And
this has been a wonderful conversation with Dr. John Gallagher from Maryville College in Tennessee, talking to us about the economy of communion. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.